John O'Keefe was a single parent of 2 children he adopted when his sister and her husband tragically died within 2 months of each other. He was also a Boston police officer. John was dating Karen Reed for a couple of years when tragedy struck again. After a night of bar hopping with Karen in downtown Canton, Massachusetts, John was found dead on the front lawn of another officer's home who was hosting an after-hours party. Prosecutors say Karen ran him over after a heated argument fueled by jealousy and a soured relationship. But the defense says he was killed inside the home, and the homeowners, along with other people in the house and local and state police, conspired to frame Karen Reed. One person identified by the defense as being part of the conspiracy is ATF agent Brian Higgins, who was at the bar and at the party that night. Flirtatious messages between Higgins and Reed complicated his story on the stand. And today, under cross-examination, Higgins was grilled about why he disposed of his cell phone at a dumpster on a military base. And no cameras were allowed inside of the courtroom today as the jury heard from John O'Keefe's adopted children as they testified about the death of their uncle and his relationship with Karen Reed. We have the latest from the courtroom as we continue our coverage into the tragic death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Julia Janae, filling in for Vinnie Politan this week. He's on assignment filming the new season of Accomplice to Murder. And what we saw today inside of the courtroom, it was a big day in Dedham, Massachusetts. The defendant, Karen Reed, she's on trial for the murder of her boyfriend, who was a Boston police officer, John O'Keefe. Now, testimony concluded on Friday last week after the jury heard some steamy text messages between Karen Reed and ATF agent Brian Higgins. They were brought into evidence, and it brought up questions about Karen's relationship with Higgins and the status of her relationship with the victim in this case, John O'Keefe. Now, Higgins was at the Alberts after party where John O'Keefe would later be found dead on the front lawn. So today, he returned to the stand, and he was under cross-examination, redirect, and recross. And he was questioned about his choice to get rid of the phone that he used to exchange messages with Karen, those steamy messages, but he was also questioned about when and how he chose to dispose of his phone, and it raised a lot of red flags. The jury also heard from John O'Keefe's adopted children, his niece and nephew. They came to live with their uncle after they tragically lost both of their parents on separate occasions. Our cameras were not allowed to broadcast that testimony, and we will be bringing you a special report very soon on what John O'Keefe's niece and nephew said on the stand during that testimony. But first, let's look back at some of today's other testimony in our daily wrap.
Did you discuss those text messages with anyone?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Why not, sir?
To be honest with you, I mean, on a personal level, I kind of keep things to myself. I was a little embarrassed. Wasn't really proud of him. Kind of maybe didn't show me in a good light with respects that I was John's friend.
You didn't see anything on the side of the road, is that correct?
Absolutely not, no.
And what is it that you would have done had you seen anything, or had you seen Mr. O'Keefe on the side of the road on January 29th?
I've spent my whole life between being a firefighter, working in the profession that I work now, being a tactical medic. If I had saw John O'Keefe on the side of the road, I would have done something to make a difference.
As far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, what, if any, presentation did he have related to hypothermia?
So I know his initial temperature was low. I'd have to look, but I can see here that the nursing wrote in their notes that his, I see T equals 80.1 R, so I interpret that to be his temperature was 80.1 degrees by rectal temperature. With him, as I recall, despite resuscitative efforts for approximately half an hour, there was not a No, not a significant warming of his core temperature.
In fact, there's no mention of a vehicle whatsoever, correct?
That's correct.
Well, during the course of your treatment, did you inspect him for injuries?
So, yes.
You testified that you observed certain abrasions and scratches on his right arm, correct?
Yes.
Aside from his injuries to his right arm, and I believe you described sort of a laceration above his eye, John O'Keefe did not have a single other injury on his body from the neck down, correct?
I don't know if that's fair to say.
From the neck down, he did not have a single broken bone, right?
I don't know if that's a fair assessment or statement.
You certainly didn't notate in your report that he had any broken bones from the neck down, correct?
No, I did not. I'd happy to explain that, but to answer your question, no, I did not.
You did not report a single fracture from the neck down, correct?
I did not report a single fracture, correct.
Based on some studies, they came up with a few different conversion factors, knowing that the blood alcohol content would be higher than the serum plasma content. They're able to apply different conversion factors to the numbers that we would get in serum. We usually give a low, an average, and a high, being that it's kind of hard to say what one particular person's conversion factor would be between the two of them. So our values that were calculated for the low was a 0.078 gram percent. The high was a 0.083 gram percent, with the average being a 0.081.
And so for purposes of your calculation, if Ms. Reed drank alcohol after 12:45 a.m. and before her blood was drawn at 9:08 a.m., your entire calculation would be invalid.
Yeah.
A lot of witnesses on the stand today. Some key witnesses like Brian Higgins, definitely key to the defense case for Karen Reed, but also we heard some health and medical information coming slowly out about that day that John O'Keefe's body was found. Information about him, but also information about Karen Reed, her status. But what you likely didn't see here on Court TV, if you were watching, you didn't see the details that came from the witness stand through the niece and nephew of John O'Keefe. That was something that the court ordered, that there could be no video and no audio. So what we have now is Boston 25 reporter Ted Daniel, who is inside of that courtroom today for this testimony of the minor children. He's joining us live from Massachusetts tonight. Ted, thanks so much for joining us. You've been following this case from the very beginning. You're adamant about your tweets from inside of the courtroom. They are very helpful to knowing what's going on there. And you put out some really great notes about what had happened. I think you were relegated not even to being able to tweet during that testimony because the court said no electronics, so you had to handwrite them down. But I want to get your take from being inside of the courtroom, what the demeanor of the niece and nephew were like and what they had to say about Karen Reed's relationship with John O'Keefe before he died.
Well, I think this is a key component, Julia, to the prosecution's argument and their theory that, they say the relationship had soured, that Karen was at the end of her rope with John and was, thinking about somebody else. And I think they brought the children in to sort of back that theory up. Both kids testified that, at the beginning of the relationship, it was great and they enjoyed Karen. But they both said towards the end of the relationship that things were not as good. And they were specifically asked about, arguments that the two may have had, whether it had been on vacation or at the house. Keep in mind, Karen was a big part of the kids' life. She would drive them to school. She took care of them a lot. John was a police officer, so he had, tough hours, and Karen was there during a lot of time for the kids.
It's sobering to remember that they not only lost their mother, their father, adopted by their uncle, then to not only lose him, but it sounds like Karen was very much a mother figure in their life for a period of time. And now they've lost her, not only to this incident, but now that she's on trial, that who knows what will happen when the jury gets this case. But Ted, what was it like as far as the minors coming into the courtroom? We know the family of both parties are there. We have John O'Keefe's family, who has been in this courtroom every day, but also Karen Reed's family. How did they respond to the kids on the stand? And did you notice anything from the jury?
Yeah, the courtroom is so small, and right now the only people that are essentially allowed in is a group of Karen Reed's family and friends, and then John O'Keefe's family and friends. So that's about it, besides the 10 members of the media. And as you mentioned, I was kind of struck that when they said when the children were coming in, we knew that the cameras would have to go off, and I think that was a great thing that the court did. There was no reason for that to be broadcast, that testimony, but they said to us, okay, we even want your electronics put away. You couldn't take notes. So the court literally went and grabbed paper and pen for us reporters who've gone all electronic, and that's the way we took our notes. As for the family, I mean, I think that, you know, these kids are so special to the O'Keefe family. They've been through so much. I think it had to have been hard for them to see, you know, a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old in this setting. The defense didn't spend a lot of time on cross with the kids, maybe a couple quick questions. And one of the things that struck me from the defense, it was David Yannetti who was doing the cross, and he said to the 13-year-old boy, after asking one question, he said, "I'm sorry that you have to be here." And that's the way he ended, you know, his cross with that child. And it seemed like the prosecution wanted to make a point that, you know, that the kids had seen some stuff. And I think if I was on the jury, I think that, okay, I understand that, at least in the eyes of the kids, they're saying that, you know, that it wasn't all roses in this relationship.
All right, I saw in your notes that you mentioned the niece witnessed some yelling or overheard some yelling in Aruba that the jury has heard a lot about. That would have been about 4 weeks before this incident. But I also noticed in your notes the night or the morning after John O'Keefe was missing, that at 4:30 in the morning, the niece was woken up by Karen. What did the jury learn about what was happening inside of that home when John O'Keefe was not there, but Karen Reed was?
Yeah, so it was 4:30 in the morning. This is, you know, about 2 hours before John O'Keefe's body would be discovered on the lawn of 34 Fairview Road in Canton. And the niece said that Karen came in, said her name, and she was just kind of waking up, and then Karen walked out. And then she said that she heard her name again. And then Karen asked her to make a number of phone calls. One to Jennifer McCabe, who had been at 34 Fairview Road the night before. And that the niece said that she overheard during one of those phone calls Karen saying something to the effect of, "Did I hit him? Could I have hit him?" And that's sort of been echoed by previous witnesses, including some of the first responders. So that is another person who has said that Karen made somewhat incriminating statements. And so this is the time where she calls, I believe, Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts, and then they end up coming to John's house where Karen was going to, where Karen was at, and then they go out looking for John shortly after that.
You know, Ted, it's confused me a bit when I've heard everything around this testimony before the niece and nephew took the stand as to why Karen Reed had to get the niece involved. Did it become clear why she had to get her to make those calls to people, why she didn't call herself? Did she not have the numbers, or was there a reason that she had the niece so involved in this kind of panic of looking for John O'Keefe?
I mean, I think it's logical that if you're thinking on Karen's side of this, that if she's not sure what happened to John, that's his house, that she would go to the house, that she'd wake up the kids and say, where is John? Have you seen him? Why? I don't think necessarily that Karen would have had Jen McCabe's phone number or Carrie Roberts' phone number. And the oldest niece did know Jennifer McCabe well because she's friends with her daughter, and Jennifer McCabe coached some of her sporting teams. So she had known Jennifer well. And, the impression that you get from the oldest niece is that, Karen was, distraught, beside herself. And so it may be hard to put a lot of logic into what she was doing that morning.
Ted, I have one quick question before we have to get in a break, but the cross-examination, how did that go? Did the defense use kid gloves during that? But more importantly, they brought out that the incriminating statement of maybe I hit him, that the niece didn't tell police that initially.
Yeah, that's about the only question that David Yannetti asked, and that was on the niece. After she finished her testimony saying, hey, I heard this incriminating statement, he said, well, you spoke to law enforcement at this time, and he gave the exact date, and he asked her, did you make this statement to them? I'm not sure if we ever got a full answer before there was an objection, but, what he was insinuating was, hey, why didn't you say this before? Why are all these incriminating statements coming out months and even years later? And I think that David Yannetti tried to insinuate that it's possible that Jennifer McCabe had been coaching this girl. He asked her, how much have you been talking with her? How much, have you been talking about this case? So I think David was trying to leave it with the jury that, okay, this girl, her testimony, she's gone through it with these people who he says have a very vested interest in the outcome of this trial.
Right, using that term coaching in front of the jury, even though he meant that she was her coach actually in sports. Ted, Daniel, thank you so much for all of that information, being our eyes and ears inside of the courtroom. We are going to have to take that break, but we're going to break down the cross-examination of Brian Higgins. But first, here's a look at what's coming up in the next hour. In Ocean City, New Jersey, Christopher Greger is accused of abusing and murdering his 6-year-old son, Corey. Prosecutors say that Corey died from blunt force trauma caused by abuse at the hands of his father. But today, the defense's expert, famed forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Bodden, tells the jury that trauma was from healthcare professionals performing CPR and that Corey actually died from severe rapid pneumonia. Tonight, we'll bring in our own expert to break down what could have caused the death of little Corey.
My opinion would be that the manner of death, for all the information that we have, is natural.
In 2011, Karen Swift returned home from a Halloween party
and was never seen alive again.
Weeks later, her body was found near a cemetery.
The case then went cold for over a decade.
Now, her estranged husband faces trial for her murder.
The couple was going through a bitter breakup.
But did divorce lead David Swift to kill?
The Karen Swift murder trial. Live coverage begins this week only on Court TV.
In September of 2022, you were served with a preservation order for your phone, were you not?
Yes.
After September of 2022, you never received anything in writing that canceled or lifted that preservation order, correct?
That's correct.
After September of 2022, you made the decision to dispose of your phone without consulting anybody about the decision to throw out your phone, correct?
Yes.
What happened to the phone and why was it thrown out? Today, under cross-examination, ATF agent Brian Higgins was grilled about his decision to get rid of that phone after a September 2022 preservation order had been issued by a judge saying, don't get rid of anything that may be relevant to the case against Karen Reed. And while Higgins did turn over the text messages that he had with not only the defendant Karen Reed, but also some that he exchanged with the victim, John O'Keefe, he turned all of that over to investigators. Any other conversations he had with anyone else around that time disappeared with that phone. Now, the cross-examination got even more interesting when Reed's defense attorney questioned him about the specific steps that he took to get rid of that phone, including cutting up the SIM card and disposing of everything, including the device, at a military base dumpster. Take a listen.
You took the SIM card out of your phone, correct?
No, what I testified to was that it's...
Did you take the SIM card out of your phone, yes or no?
I don't know.
Did you testify that that's what you do when you get rid of phones, sir?
What I said was that might have been the extent of it if I was to have done that.
And you either cut up the SIM card or ripped it up, correct?
I believe what I testified to was
I would have... I'm not asking you what you testified to. I'm asking you today, did you either cut up the SIM card or rip it up?
Cut it up or broke it.
And you'll agree with me that you took that destroyed SIM card and put it in a trash bag, did you not?
I believe it went in a trash bag, yes.
Well, you used a passive voice. It went in a trash bag. Did it fly out of your hand unexpectedly into a trash bag, sir?
No, sir. It would have been disposed of with the phone.
No, I understand. But are you reluctant to say that you put it in a trash bag, sir?
Objection.
Can you answer that? Are you reluctant to say that?
No, Your Honor. I put it in a trash bag. Or with my trash.
And then you also took your phone, now without the SIM card, and you put that in the trash bag too, did you not?
Yes, sir.
Then you drove to a military base and you threw both the destroyed SIM card and the phone into a dumpster, did you not?
Well, I was cutting through the base, and I believe how I testified
Did you drive
was...
to a military base, sir?
I was cutting through a base, yes.
Did you drive to it?
Yes, sir.
And then you put both the destroyed SIM card and the phone itself, which were in a trash bag, into a dumpster on that military base, did you not?
I believe that's what I did, yes.
And as you were driving away, you knew that that destroyed SIM card and the phone would be gone forever, correct?
Yes, I threw it away.
And before you drove away, you did not transfer anything from your old phone to the new phone, correct?
That's correct.
You lost all of your photos on that phone, did you not?
Whatever photos I had on there, I did, yes.
You lost all your videos on that phone, did you not?
To the extent if I had any.
You lost all of your other text messages besides the ones that you had with Karen Reed and John O'Keefe, correct?
That's correct.
And you knew that you did have text messages on that old phone with Kevin Albert.
He's a friend, most likely.
You also had text messages on your phone with Nicole Albert.
Most likely, yes.
And you had text messages on your phone with Brian Albert.
Yes.
It was important to you that no one see those text exchanges that you had with those three members of the Albert family.
Objection.
I'll let him have it.
No, sir, that's not true.
Let's bring on our guests to see if they can make sense of all of this. Joining us tonight, Karen Reed, supporter and creator of the Justice for Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Reed Facebook page. Nick Rocco is with us. Also, the YouTuber behind the Yellow Cottage Tales account, Kevin Lenahan, is here, and criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr. with us as well. Thank you all for joining us today. Nick, let me start with you. Can you help us understand how we even know all of these things about what happened to the phone? Because we have the witness on the stand saying things like, I believe that's what happened, but the attorney is asking questions. It seems to be pretty definitive. How do we know all of these steps that he took?
So all of this information is coming from their federal grand jury testimony that they either in May, June, July of 2023 all of these people were confronted by the feds and they had to testify in front of them. So when they're confronted with a question of, did you do this butt dial, and they say no, they have everything to back them up from what they testified with the feds. And the same thing with this phone. At first, he wasn't sure what he did with the SIM card, but they're confronted with their own words. And we saw the same thing with Jennifer McCabe. She didn't want to speak unless she saw these records, because she didn't want to make sure she lied on the stand. She wanted to stay true to what she said in these federal grand jury minutes. So all of this information that is being received is from the feds, pretty much at this point.
From the feds, but it sounds like it's from their own words. So Joseph Krowski, if you can try and make some suggestions here about what may be going on, because we have a witness who did preserve certain text messages. This is an officer, so he understands the importance of a preservation order. If they find out that he had gotten rid of those texts as well, they may have been presumed to be incriminating if he had violated that preservation order. But what would behoove someone to get rid of a phone after they have been told you have to preserve the phone?
Well, I think you got to put it in its proper context. Alan Jackson on Friday had spent a great amount of time cross-examining Brian Higgins on his training and experience. And essentially, he got Brian Higgins to concede that he knows how to use cell phones as part of an investigation. He knows the type of information that can be stored on a cell phone, and he knows how to wipe clean a cell phone. But that really cuts both ways, doesn't it? If Brian Higgins was really part of some grand conspiracy to cover up a murder or participate in a murder, you would think as a seasoned ATF agent, he wouldn't be putting anything incriminatory on his cell phone. Second of all, the date of the alleged incident here, the date of the death of John O'Keefe, is January 29, 2022. That phone had been around before any notice of a preservation order until September of 2022. And even then, he waited until October of 2022 until he had information that the motion had been denied granting access to the phone before he discarded the phone. So, look, for people that are into the conspiracy theory, it's some red meat for them, no doubt about it. But again, it's only a matter of implication. It is not direct evidence being presented to this jury of actual evidence of a conspiracy. He also did explain, I think Adam Lally did a fairly nice job of rehabilitating that point, that as an ongoing ATF agent, that number had been compromised, and one of the targets of his investigation had come to know his cell phone, his personal number on that phone, and that was really the basis or the motivating factor to getting rid of the phone. To be fair, I guess it's not the best look either to be driving down to a military base and breaking the SIM card and throwing it out in the dumpster at the military base, but I do believe he had an explanation for that as well.
Yeah, in July was when he had that compromising call that he said happened where a suspect figured out his number in an undercover operation, but this preservation order was in September, and that's when he got rid of it. So Kevin, Joseph calls it red meat, and I think it is a red meat, red flag for people who may really be questioning whether or not there is some kind of conspiracy going on. But your thoughts about that part of the testimony, the phone, the destruction of the phone on this military base, and whether or not there's some credence to whether or not something else may be going on, but not necessarily an involvement in John O'Keefe's death?
Well, sometimes things look nefarious until you find out all the information. So Brian Higgins owns a house in Brewster, Mass. on Cape Cod. The town does not have trash pickup. I spend a week there every summer. And what the residents do is they take their trash to a landfill owned by the town, which is basically on the military base. And as a veteran, he has access to the base anyways, and it's a shortcut that bypasses a lot of traffic. He has a duty-free store. So he's going to take his trash there pretty much every day and drop it off as he's driving to work in Massachusetts. But to me, when I look at this too, the defense needed to win the battle for Agent Higgins. They've really promised that there was a conspiracy here. And this was a 3-round fight. Last Friday in the morning, Agent Higgins won that fight. He came across as sincere and believable. But in round 2 in the afternoon, Alan Jackson scored a lot of points and really set up what I thought was going to be something big for today that didn't happen. And instead, this round 3, again, went to Agent Higgins because he came across as just a lonely guy who at best maybe had some texts that were embarrassing on his phone.
Yeah, there was some embarrassing texts. We're out of time. Sorry about that, but we are going to talk more about the Karen Read trial after this. Everyone is staying with us. We're going to have testimony about John O'Keefe's injuries. That came out in testimony today. What does that say about this case?
As in, I typed in there is a right superior orbital ridge region, approximately 7 millimeter laceration, and then with surrounding soft tissue swelling / contusion. That he had breath sounds present bilaterally. I observed that he was pulseless. His abdominal exam was atraumatic on my chart, and then extremity exam or musculoskeletal exam. I wrote that he had superficial abrasions on the right forearm.
And from a medical perspective, when you use that term abrasions, so can you explain to the jury what you understand the term abrasions to mean?
Yeah, I use it as a medical synonym for scratches, if you will.
Those injuries on John O'Keefe's body, that will tell this jury a lot about how he died, where he was when he died, what was involved. We know that Boston police officer John O'Keefe was brought to Good Samaritan Hospital around 6:47 a.m. on January 29th, 2022. And the emergency medical physician, Dr. Justin Rice, he signed a declaration of death at the hospital for O'Keefe at around 7:50 a.m. that morning. The doctor testified about the injuries that he observed on O'Keefe, including a 7 millimeter laceration to the orbital bone, also scratches on O'Keefe's right forearm. And on cross-examination, Rice was questioned about those injuries that he did not observe on O'Keefe that morning at the hospital.
Is there anywhere on that report that says that the patient came in and there was a statement by EMS that the victim appeared to have been struck by a vehicle?
Just give me a moment to read through the...
Sure.
So no, there is not.
In fact, there's no mention of a vehicle whatsoever, correct?
That's correct.
Did you observe Mr. O'Keefe's injuries when he arrived at the hospital that morning?
I guess you'd have to define what observe injuries means.
Well, during the course of your treatment, did you inspect him for injuries?
So, yes.
You testified that you observed certain abrasions and scratches on his right arm, correct?
Yes.
Aside from his injuries to his right arm, and I believe he described sort of a laceration above his eye, John O'Keefe did not have a single other injury on his body from the neck down, correct?
I don't know if that's fair to say.
Well, you didn't report a single injury to his shoulders, correct?
Correct.
You did not report a single injury to his chest, correct?
Correct.
You did not report a single injury to his torso, correct?
Correct.
You did not report a single injury to his back, correct?
Correct.
You also did not report a single injury to his ribs, correct?
Correct.
No injury to his hips, right?
Correct.
You observed no injury to his knees, correct?
I reported no injuries to his knees, correct?
No injuries to his shins, correct?
Correct.
No injuries to his ankles, right?
Correct.
And no injuries to his feet.
Correct.
From the neck down, he did not have a single broken bone, right?
I don't know if that's a fair assessment or statement.
You certainly didn't notate in your report that he had any broken bones from the neck down, correct?
No, I did not. I'd happy to explain that, but to answer your question, no, I did not.
You did not report a single fracture from the neck down, correct?
I did not report a single fracture, correct?
The injuries that you testified to today were that he had sort of a laceration above his eyelid, correct?
The injuries that I testified to today, correct, yes.
And the scratches on his right arm?
On the right forearm, yes.
No further questions.
All right, a lack of things really from the neck down on John O'Keefe's body other than those scratches that we've seen so much. Nick, Rocco, what did you think of, actually first let me bring everyone back in, this great panel that we have of people who are plugged into this case. Nick Rocco, Kevin Lenahan, and Joseph Krowski Jr. Nick, your thoughts on the doctor's testimony today. How did he come across and what did you think about the things that are missing?
So we have this jury sitting here and listening to this whole case being presented to them. Now you have the doctor sitting here, and what he's saying is that there are no injuries from the neck down that he reported, and the only injuries are from, the front of his face and the back of his head. And you want a jury to believe that a 6,000-pound vehicle going 24 miles per hour caused those injuries with nothing to his body? They're not going to buy that, especially when they actually get to see these photos in the condition that John was in. There is absolutely no way that a vehicle would one, put those scratches on his arm unless he was ran over. And if he was run over, he would have had some type of scratches from the metal on his stomach or even the back from being on the ground. There's just absolutely no way that a vehicle would provide the damage that John had. And then one of the biggest things I think as well is the fire department had stated that we told the doctor that, a vehicle struck John. But again, nowhere in any report does it state that. Now, if this doctor heard that and didn't put it in the report, I don't know what's going on with these people who are hearing things and not putting them in the reports. But my assumption is it was never said, because if it was said, that's a pretty crucial piece of information that should be put in a report, was that we believe he got hit by a car. But unfortunately, it's not put in there because his damages just don't match that.
Joseph, can you speak to the report issue? Because we have heard that a lot, especially from the EMT and from now the ER doctor, of things just not being in the report. As an attorney, can you speak to sometimes how those initial doctors in the emergency realm, what do you normally see as far as the detailed nature of what's in those reports, and also the fact that, him not putting anything about a car, does that raise any eyebrows for you?
No, not really. There's, a natural order to the way these things are done. If you listen to his testimony in its entirety, what he said is he was mostly concerned with resuscitative efforts. When John O'Keefe was presented to him at around 6:47 a.m., EMTs write their own reports. Sometimes information is relayed orally to the ER doctor. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it makes it into the report. Sometimes it doesn't. This isn't necessarily a report. What this is a medical record. And if there's some information regarding a suspected cause of injury, sometimes you find that in there. Sometimes you don't. But a couple of real key takeaways. One, this doctor was able to get Karen Reed's blood alcohol level at 0.09. So 0.08 is the legal limit. 6 to 7 hours later, she is still over the legal limit. This doctor also is able to testify that he was concerned with resuscitative efforts. In Massachusetts, under the involuntary manslaughter statute, you typically don't have a duty to render aid or assistance to someone unless you cause that injury. So coupled with all of the people that heard Karen Reed say, I either hit him, or I might have hit him, or I thought I hit him, would have brought upon her a duty to get aid to John O'Keefe. And why that's really compelling now is we're finding out 6 hours later, he was still viable. Life was still viable. So that's the second part of it, I think, that I really took away from his testimony. Look, he's not the medical examiner. He wouldn't document all of the fractures and broken bones because he doesn't go into the body. The medical examiner is going to do that. He essentially lays the foundation of calling the time of death and some of the basic observations he made.
Yeah, the medical examiner is coming. He is definitely coming.
The arm injuries. Right. The theory about the arm injury is it was caused by a dog, but it's a medical term of art. Notice he didn't call it a puncture wound. He called it an abrasion. The lay term just being a scratch, probably not consistent with a dog bite. So he laid the foundation, but the government needed to call him to get some of the evidence in there regarding blood alcohol and time of death.
I want to ask Kevin this question, but I want to play some sound first about a possible other theory of where the scratch could come from. Now, this was even before the start of Karen Reed's trial, that the defense claimed that a snowplow driver was on Fairview Road in the early morning hours of January 29th. And today, the Commonwealth called a superintendent of public works, the department in charge of all that plowing that happens during a snowstorm. Michael Trotta, he testified that he spoke to Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator on this case, after the death of John O'Keefe, about who would have been driving a plow on that road that night.
Trooper Proctor, Michael Proctor, never asked to speak with Brian Laughlin when he talked to you over the phone, correct?
He did not ask me, no.
I'm going to allow the question and answer.
After that couple or 3-minute phone conversation, you'll agree with me that Michael Proctor never followed up again with you personally.
That's a good question. I am not sure.
You don't drive the trucks, correct?
No, I do not.
But Brian Laughlin does?
Yes, he does.
And Brian Laughlin was driving the truck that plowed Fairview on January 29th of 2022?
Yes.
Objection. Let me have a moment.
Yes, it'll stand. The answer will stand, Mr. Loudon.
Kevin, we only have a few seconds before we have to go to break, but can you just explain if you think that a snowplow could have caused those injuries to John O'Keefe's arm?
No, there's no way that a snowplow caused those injuries. And the thing here is the medical examiner is obviously going to explain what the report is, but the credibility of the defense team really, really matters. And they promised the jury that this was caused by a dog attack. And that doctor has said that they were not only abrasions, but superficial abrasions. There's no way. There's been so much evidence here that this is not from a dog attack. No credibility.
And that is where we have to leave it. Thank you to our guests who have been on today, Kevin Lenihan and Joseph Krowski Jr. and Nick Rocco. We'll see you real soon.